We've got about 400 people who've signed up for this webinar, which shows, I think, how popular this topic is, how many people are interested in somehow preparing their students for the very challenging TOK course. So we've got people from Delhi, we've got Sao Paulo. It must be very early in Sao Paulo right now. Right there. Toronto, Canada, also very, very early. Thanks for joining us. Auckland, New Zealand, 10 p.m. Okay, a little bit later. Egypt, Istanbul, London, fantastic. Rhode Island, US, I believe. Abu Dhabi, yeah, fantastic. This is great. So I'm going to apologize in advance. You may hear a dog barking in the background. But I hope my new lockdown dog is going to be well behaved during the course of this. But you might see me shooting off to give us some food or water at some point. Okay, so today we're going to be looking at running a pre-TOK course. The learning objective for the webinar is for you to walk away with an understanding of how to construct an effective pre-TOK course, which will help your students to acclimatize to TOK more willingly. I think TOK is a big ask. I think sometimes we underestimate how challenging it can be for them, how unfamiliar it is. And so for that reason, I have created a pre-TOK course. I'm not sure about that name, which I'm going to talk about in a second. And I know a lot of other schools and a lot of other educators are doing the same thing because they want to prepare their students in some way. But we've got to be careful about that, and I'll talk more about that in a second. Okay, so running order for the day. Well, just for the morning. This should take an hour or so. First of all, I'll just go over who I am and how we'll do this. Then I'd like to define what we mean by pre-TOK course. I think I kind of regret choosing that name because I think pre-TOK perhaps gives the wrong idea of what we're trying to do and the nature of this course. But I'll explain that in a second. I'd like to talk about the benefits of running a pre-TOK course. Then a little bit of discussion about implementing the course in a way that's not really up to me, that's more up to you, and I would love to have feedback on how you do it, how you might do it, or how you're planning to do it, because of course every school will have its own kind of restrictions and possibilities when it comes to implementing a course like this. Then I'd like to think about the objective, how to choose a suitable objective for the TOK course. In other words, what are we trying to do here? Then I'd like to give you just a quick overview of one of the Thinking for Yourself lessons, which is the pre-TOK course that I've designed, and which a lot of people have written to me and said, you know, we like it, we like what you're doing. So I think it's kind of it's hitting the right notes, and I think a lot of people are already using it and are enjoying using it. So I'll just run through one of the lessons, the first lesson. Well, there's an introductory lesson, and then the first lesson I'll go through. And then finally, I'll just go over a few bits about membership to the site. I know a lot of you, I've seen your emails, I know who you are, and I know a lot of you are already members of the site, but there are quite a few people who are not members. You're just interested in what we do. So I will just go over some of the features of membership to the theoryofknowledge.net site and how I hope we can help you. Okay, so first of all, as I've said, this should last about an hour. I do tend to meander around and go on sometimes longer than I expect to. So hopefully this will end at about 12 o'clock. If I have time, I'll take a few questions. I'll see some of your comments. I'll hopefully share some of the great ideas that you have with the rest of you. I'll also be producing a debrief email, as it says there, and sending it out. So that will include some of the frequently asked questions, some of the great pieces of feedback that you've got, some of the ways in which you're solving this problem and implementing a course like this. So you can either send me a message via the chat. The Q&A thing is probably better because it actually saves all the questions, and I inevitably sort of wipe all of the ones sent on the chat. So if you want to be sure, then send a question either to the Q&A on the Zoom webinar feature, or send me an email afterwards. That's perfectly fine. I am Michael Dunn. I'm the creator of theoryofknowledge.net. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we do later on in the webinar. Okay, so what do we mean? What do we mean by pre-TOK course? I've already had one great comment from someone saying isn't this problematic? By running a pre-TOK course, are we not sort of going against what the IBO says is acceptable, which is run a 100-hour course within 2 years? And of course, you're absolutely right, but that's not what we mean. We do not mean starting TOK early. So I haven't put that as my first bullet point. It perhaps should be my first bullet point. Absolutely, we should not be doing TOK before they do the proper TOK course. So we are not talking about starting TOK early. We are not talking about really mentioning the areas of knowledge. We're not talking about going through the core theme or the optional themes. We're certainly not talking about giving them an insight into the essay and the exhibition and trying to get them started on that early. So we absolutely are not doing that. I mean, I feel quite strongly, just as strongly as the IBO, I'm sure, feels that, that should all be done in the 2 years. That should be done in the sixth form. That should be done in DP1 and DP2. So that's not what we're talking about. However, TOK, I think, as I've said, is very, very challenging. The phrase that I sort of came to in my head is it sort of forcibly migrates students to an unfamiliar, challenging territory. Some of them are good at coping with that. Some of them are not good at coping with that. And it can leave them feeling sort of disorientated, demotivated, disenfranchised, confused, and just unhappy to be in your TOK classes. And that gets you off to quite a challenging start. You should be going into your first few lessons, amazing them, doing some incredible things, and really getting them on your side from the very, very start. They should be keen to do it rather than doing it in a kind of reluctant way. So what we want to try and do is get them used to some of the concepts that they're going to come across, some of the approaches that they'll meet during the TOK course. Get them used to the kind of idea that, we don't have to assess your knowledge by giving you a test at the end of the course. We can test your knowledge by asking you to apply it to real life situations, to news stories, to events, to issues like that, and make them feel really good about themselves, make them feel like they are a part of this. So the course that I have designed very much relies on them offering their opinions, their takes on things, because that's how we do TOK. So it's getting them used to this kind of I don't know, this mutual construction of a course together. It's getting them used to concepts such as bias and perspectives and the sort of sometimes malleable nature of truth, getting them used to using evidence to support their claims. I'll talk a little bit more about the aims, more specific aims, in a second. But it's getting them used to something different, I suppose you could say. Getting them used to a more adult course, a more realistic course, a course, excuse me, that can be applied to the real world. Okay, so we are not doing TOK early. We are giving them a nice kind of primer in thinking, in critical thinking. But I hesitate to say that because the course that I've designed is meant to be based on the 4 C's, as I'll talk about in a minute, but it's more than just critical thinking. It's communication, it's collaboration, and it's creativity. So that's what I mean by a pre-TOK course. The course that I have in mind, the course that I have designed, involves 12 lessons of about an hour. They can be sort of contracted and expanded to sort of from 45 minutes up to 90 minutes. There are some optional slides in there that you can or you don't have to run. The course also has an introductory lesson and it has a concluding lesson. It mentions TOK in the very first lesson, in the introductory lesson, which you can actually download even if you're not a member. But it doesn't go any further than that. It says, you will be doing this in DP. But it doesn't go any further than that. It doesn't sort of give them the course structure in any detail. It doesn't start getting them thinking about the assessment tasks that they will be doing. Okay, so it's definitely pre-TOK. It's not TOK. Okay, so benefits. Where's this going to get us? So first of all, I think it's going to get students into the right frame of mind. It's going to get them thinking in an original, creative way. It's going to get them enjoying this lesson. It's going to get them really seeing what they can do with their knowledge. It's going to introduce them to a really cool range of ideas, terms, thinkers. I think there's nothing more empowering than giving students terms for for ideas and concepts that they already sort of know. And as soon as they've got a word to describe these phenomena, these concepts, they feel so much better about themselves. They feel so empowered. So empowerment, as I mentioned there, is a really important thing. Empowerment and education for me is synonymous. It also begins a process, or maybe it consolidates, depending on where they are with their learning and what you do in your school, a process whereby they question the sources of their knowledge, their own assumptions. I mean, I don't know what courses that you're doing. I always relate things back to history. I know in sort of GCSE history, you're doing quite a lot of source analysis, but I don't think it goes anywhere near far enough. So the sources of the knowledge in all of the courses that they're doing, which is what they will be doing a lot more in the DP, and obviously what they do in TOK, and their own assumptions. You know, for me, TOK is all about assumption busting, and I want to start doing that with them. You know, ask them what they think about, what they think they know about the world, and then testing that assumption, testing that knowledge, and seeing how sort of firm it is. It also connects them to a real world. If you do this kind of course properly, invites them to be a part of this world, to offer their opinions on it, to interact with it, to apply their learning to it. So you know, it's a good opportunity to get them interacting with the contemporary world, what's going on out there, contemporary events, important, significant issues, and so on. So overall, you know, that word empower, I don't think we can emphasize it enough. It empowers them. It showcases how our learning can be used. You know, I think that TOK is a massively practical subject that really can be really applied to the real world. You know, for me, the people that see it as a more abstract, weird course, you know, they haven't quite got the right idea about what TOK is. You know, it is very practical. It's to be applied to the real world, and that's what we're going to start doing with this pre-TOK course. Okay, so how do we implement it? Well, that's kind of the big question, and that will obviously very much depend on your school. I think for a course of this sort to work, which is probably going to be sort of extraneous to what you're already doing at GCSE or MYP or whatever else it is that you do, this is probably going to be done somehow in a separate way. So you're going to definitely need support from your senior management team, and I you know, I've spoken to senior managers, I've spoken to deputy heads, I've spoken to heads of sections, and they do seem to be quite keen on this idea of running a course of this kind. You know, I say pre-TOK, perhaps it should really be pre-DP or even pre-A level. Because you know, I think this prepares them not just for one course, but for the whole of their learning within the sixth form, within DP, within those 17, 18-year-old groups, and beyond. Hopefully, you know, it sets them up for university. So you know, I hope you have that. I'm imagining that, you know, most of you joining us will already have that kind of support from your senior management team. You will have that support from kind of heads of department. People will be on board with this kind of thing. So you can deliver the course, I think, as a standalone experience. This is why I've gone for 12 lessons. I don't think that's too sort of onerous. I don't think it gives them more than just a taste. You know, 12 lessons we can get a lot done in 12 lessons, but on the other hand, you know, we could have made it longer, but I think that would start to become impractical. So we're looking at a sort of 12-week course. If you're offering it once a week, you'll need a slot, a dedicated slot. I would say within the timetable. You know, I was thinking as I was designing this, you know, could this be optional for some students? But I don't think that is a good way of going. I saw a really good post the other day on LinkedIn, someone saying, can we please stop using this term gifted and talented? And I totally agree with that person for saying that. You know, I think to identify certain students as the ones that we're going to spend all our time helping is actually quite a terrible way to go. So I think this should be an experience for all your students who are going on to sixth form studies, to the DP, to TOK, or whatever else it is that you do in your school. So we do need, I think, a dedicated slot within your timetable, which of course will be difficult for some schools. An alternative to that would be to get different teachers to deliver sessions within their classes. That will of course depend on the extent to which everyone is sort of on board with this. Now, I know some schools have quite large TOK departments, and they have teachers from virtually every subject. You know, I work a lot with a school that has well over a dozen members of its TOK department. So between them, they are teaching, you know, lots of different subjects. And I think for them, that would work quite well if each of those teachers took the lead in their subject departments and you know, delivered the course like that. So it really depends on how your school is set up. I think doing it that second way would require a little more coordination, you know, rather than someone just sort of taking it on themselves or with a small team delivering all the lessons, because obviously we want to make sure that it's a good experience, that teachers are supported when they deliver it, that the students are actually receiving the lessons, and so on. In terms of timing, I mean, I think you could stretch it over sort of a 2-year period before TOK, but I think that might drag it out a little bit too long. I prefer the idea of just in the final year of say GCSEs or your final MYP year. There is a space, there is a space, and my own son is in that space, or he will be in that space this week after finishing his exams, these strange exams in the UK that aren't officially happening, but actually are happening. So this week he finishes his academic year, his GCSEs are over. And then you have that space, which I know parents are quite keen for students to carry on learning, and some schools do kind of schedule things. I think that's probably not the way to go, because I think this course, you obviously you want to make it a success. You want it to engage the students. You want it to be fun. You want them to buy into it, and doing it after their exams is a problem. So timing is tricky, because you know, you do want them involved. You don't want to clash with their exams. So do it too late, and they're going to be either they'll be completely switched off because they'll have finished their exams, or it will clash with their GCSE. So perhaps the best time for me would be at the beginning of year 2 of the GCSEs, depending on your schedule. But you know, this is obviously very much something that you can decide on yourself, and it depends on your school structure. I think you need final tangible product, a final tangible product at the end of this course. Now, I should be apologizing, because the course was meant to have launched in its entirety. We've only got up to lesson 8, so we've still got 4 more lessons to go, which I am working furiously on at the moment. I should have the next 2 finished by the end of next week, and then after that, the final couple of lessons in the concluding session by early in June. So it is coming. I apologize if you're waiting for the next lessons, but they are coming out, and they'll be with you quite soon. And I'll show you what's coming up in a second and what's already available. So I think we need a final product. We do need something for them to create. We don't want to overload them with homework. I have not designed this course, and I don't think any course should be designed with much homework in mind. I mean, I think they should go off and watch the news. They should be applying what you're learning to the real world, as I've said, but I don't think they should be doing any sort of outside work for this, apart from at the end when I think they need to produce some kind of reflection on what they have done, where they've taken their learning, the key thinkers that they've met, a key idea that they really found, you know, very, very engaging and which resonated with them. So they do need something tangible at the end, and that will of course be built into the lessons that I'm now creating. So they will walk away with something at the end as kind of a tangible proof of their learning. Okay, so this is the sort of part that you will need to do more work on than me. So implementing it, and this is where I'd love your suggestions. If you can send them my way, I can share them with the whole sort of community that we've got here for this webinar, and we can get some really good ideas sort of flowing back and forth. Okay, so it's absolutely essential that you have a clear course objective, and this is. I mean, I don't want to talk too much about TOK as I say there in the first bullet point. I think the first objective should be to create a standalone course that doesn't necessarily rely on TOK, that doesn't necessarily lead on to TOK. I'd love this course to be done by non IB diploma schools. I'd love this course to be done by lots of students, you know, in whatever kind of school that they are, and that's what it's designed for. It's not meant to be filled with loads of kind of curriculum specific jargon that can only be used in the DP. It's meant to be universal. It's meant to be, you know, applicable to the real world. It's meant to be as practical as possible, as I've said. So, you know, the first objective for me is to make it a standalone course. However, we need to go a little bit further. What are we trying to do with this course? Now, as I say, I don't want to talk too much about TOK, but I think one of the problems sometimes with TOK is that it doesn't have clear enough objectives. It's hard to give your kind of elevator pitch, which is essentially the learning objective, about TOK. Now, personally, I have made TOK, my own take on TOK, align as much as possible with the 4 C's, which is what I've tried to do with Thinking for Yourself. But like I say, the two do not necessarily have to belong together. You can do this pre-TOK course without going on to TOK. So it's another reason to not call it a pre-TOK course. Maybe I need to change my terminology there. So, okay, my overall aim, just with TOK, is to help students become positive, active members of the epistemic community, communities of knowers, but I prefer that word, epistemic community. And to do that, you know, I genuinely think there's no better way there are no better skills to hone within the students than critical thinking, creativity, communication, and collaboration. And I've racked my brain to try and be more creative and original, but I really think that they are great, the 4 C's still. I know they've been around for quite a while now. For some, they've become perhaps a little bit of a cliche, but I think that's only because they're used so often by so many different types of people. So for me, I'm a big fan of the 4 C's. So what does this mean? This means getting students used to making evidence-based claims, you know, the idea of a knowledge claim supported with demonstrable evidence. I want them to understand the importance of creative, lateral, original thinking. I want them to practice articulating their ideas in a clear and coherent way. And maybe the most important of the 4 C's, collaboration. I want them to listen to, really genuinely listen to, and learn from the ideas of others. Okay, so this is not just critical thinking. I don't think critical thinking is particularly useful term. I think, you know, thinking in terms of the 4 C's is much more useful. So if you like, it's critical thinking plus, but you know, I prefer to stick to the 4 C's. So that's my course objective. I want to hone those skills within my students, and that's where we begin. That's how we start the course, by explaining those. We do pick it up again with TOK, but like I say, it doesn't have to lead on to TOK or something to do with the IB. Okay, so this is how we do it. Okay, I think the best way of sort of putting all this together is to show you how I do it. This is a course I've designed. It's up to lesson 8. So you can see that there are 12 lessons there. I designed this by starting off thinking, what do I want my students to know? What do I want them to know by the end of GCSE/MYP, you know, when they're 15, 16 years old, before they go into DP? What do I want them to know to help them with TOK? But more than that, you know, to help them with all of their courses, to help them with life, if I can sound cliched, you know, what's going to be good for them? What do they really need to know? And of course, you know, we end up with very much skill-based, concept-based learning, and this is where we are. So we start with extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I think that's the basis for critical thinking. You know, we have to support what we're saying with evidence. So this lesson I will go through in a second with you. So the learning objective you see there in italics, I can explain the importance of justifying my claims and beliefs with evidence. We move on to thinking about biases. You know, another really important thing I want my students to take away is that, you know, they can't go through life just looking for support for what they already think. They've got to work hard at challenging what they already think, their assumptions about the world. We have a look at the role of language So, you know, perhaps the first two lessons connected to critical thinking. Then we move on more to do with communication. Words matter. We think about the idea of loaded language, how you can I wouldn't say lie, but how you can mislead by language choice and by omission of certain words, you know, that's a really nice lesson for them. Then we start thinking about truth, perspectives, and how, you know, well, you can see the learning objective for yourself that sometimes different perspectives lead to different interpretations of the world. The idea that, you know, we're not just going to meet objective truth, which is supported by facts. You know, it's a nuanced way of thinking. So, you know, you can see how that will lead into courses that they do at DP. I want to make this quite obviously quite contemporary, linked to issues that are kind of raging around the world at the moment. You'll notice in a second, if you haven't already, that the image that I've chosen for the course is someone on their computer, because this is where we get our information on. So quite a few of the lessons align to gathering information from the internet and the sort of pitfalls of that and the advantages of that as well. So lesson 5 is all about echo chambers, not just online, just echo chambers in general, how we tend to reside in our own echo chamber. But of course, you know, as an extension of the one we live in the real world, we sort of have that reconstructed online as well in our social media kind of worlds and other worlds. Eyeballs on the screen is all about how the news is reported, really, and how there's often a very big dissonance between what's going on in the world and how it is reported by media sources, not just social media, but proper sort of more conventional news agencies. Then we think about hidden agendas. We think about this is quite closely related to science. Actually, we look at the chocolate industry and how it's kind of pumping loads of funds into research on diet, and how chocolate is a great idea if you want to lose weight and all that kind of stuff. So we look at hidden agendas and how we need to know the agenda behind a claim, and why it's important to be aware of that before we kind of analyze what someone is saying. This lovely phrase here, error blindness. I really wanted to again, something I saw today, someone suggested designing lessons deliberately so that students get them wrong. And I think that's a really interesting concept. But I love the idea of encouraging students to fail, to kind of demonstrate to them that failure is part of the learning process. So, you know, this fear of being wrong that gets stronger and stronger as you get older. I want them to analyze that and think how, or learn how, you know, ridding ourselves of that fear actually makes us become much better thinkers. So that's what's available at the moment. You can go, if you're a member of the site, you can download all of those lessons, the first 8 lessons. I'm working, as I've said, furiously on the next ones. I'm behind schedule, but they should be finished quite soon. So the next one will be looking at the idea of trust and the characteristics of a reliable knowledge source. Then I really want to think about what we do with our knowledge in terms of constructing our ethical frameworks, our ethical principles, and how there can be in some kind of systems again, dissonance, that word dissonance, between our moral outlook and what we have evidence for. You know, things that we do, things that we think, the ways in which we behave, that we sometimes know this is not morally acceptable, but we still do it. We all do it. You know, I'm certainly not any different. Then I wanted to think about the empathy gap. I mean, this is those of you who are members and you run the TOK course that I have on the site will see how these can be developed later on, and how I sort of do develop some of these. It's a standalone course, but we look again at some of these ideas. Empathy I find very, very interesting, and you know, the importance of empathy in helping us to understand something that we look at again in TOK, and sometimes it can lead us astray. But at this stage, at this level, I want to think about the importance of it in helping us to understand other points of view. And then there's a more sort of esoteric lesson at the end, thinking more about our identities and how we construct our own identities, and how perhaps this idea of me, I, it just doesn't exist, and it's an intriguing idea that I hope will play with their minds and leave them sort of thinking and hopefully wanting more at the end of the course. Then there'll be a concluding session, just rounding up everything, setting up this final product for them to create, which will be a kind of, you know, them selecting a key thinker, a key idea, and so on, and hopefully being positive about what they've done, and being able to identify how it's helped them to develop as learners and thinkers. So that's the course that I have designed, and that will be soon available in its entirety from the site to members of the site. Okay, a little bit more. You know, this is the image that I've chosen for the course, because I think this is what it's all about, really, isn't it, these days? So a few of the thinkers that we come across, I don't overload them. You know, in the TOK course, I definitely fire big thinkers at them all the time. I think it's really important for them to build up a library of ideas from some great people. I think that's part of an education, a proper education. But we do still look at some great thinkers, some great knowledge heroes, as I would call them. You know, Carl Sagan, you know that he's the ECRI guy. You know, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. We look at Donald Hoffman on his ideas about communicating ideas, and how you should agree to certain terms beforehand, because most arguments are just a difference of it's a semantic difference rather than a kind of intellectual difference. We look at Coco on non-scientific explanations. We look at Susan Barker on the multiplicity of perspectives. We look at Eli Parisi on filter bubbles. There is some disagreement over whether they actually exist. Schultz on this, she has a great phrase, the being stuck inside the feeling of rightness, which aligns to what we were just saying about not being afraid to be wrong. John Stuart Mill, you know, who I think, if you could just pick one thinker, his idea on how humility is a prerequisite of learning is just absolute genius, fantastic. And Thais Selassie on I mean, her fantastic TED talk, which we do look at again in the TOK course, but I love her idea on how we focus on where we are from as being sort of key component of our identity. And if we encourage a multiplicity of localities, if that doesn't sound too complicated, we construct a much more interesting identity for ourselves, and we can judge others in a much more interesting way. And we have a look at a lot of different real life situations, because, as I've said, I want this to be as practical as possible, as applicable to the real world as possible. You know, some little examples there. You know, the QAnon conspiracy I find fascinating. The George Floyd riots and how they've been sort of reported in the press. Banks's art being scrubbed off walls and things. Scientific research and chocolate. There are lots of real life situations. And of course, if you remember, you can use the TOK newsletter, which doesn't have to be just TOK. It can be used for this course. And as you'll see, the last slide of every lesson has some links to explore the issues in more detail and in the real world. So I'll show you that now. Okay, so here's an exemplar Thinking for Yourself lesson. This one's available for everyone. So this is you can go to the site. You can, if you go to Thinking for Yourself, the course page, you can download this whether you're a member or not. I thought I would just run through it. This is how all of the lessons are presented. They're similar to other lessons that I design. You know, they all come with a learning objective. I hope they're quite nicely constructed, with a starter, with an exit, with individual work, then building to either pair work or group work. So this is what they look like. So we think about justifying, the idea of justification. I like using images to help prompt responses. And I think also, if we're thinking ahead to TOK, you know, the idea of objects is quite an important one. All of the lessons, I should say, have notes at the bottom. I won't show you those. You can see those for yourself when you get this presentation. So you can see we're building on the idea of justification. We start with the starter, which is just for sort of individual thinkers. Then we move to some group work or partner work. And then we would construct together lots of ways in which we can justify opinions. And then I get them to do a little sort of class task in which they think about, you know, what would correspond to weak justification of a claim, what would correspond to strong justification for the claim. We get them moving around the class and hopefully being sort of active about what we're looking at. Then we have a little video clip on the QAnon conspiracy. We won't watch that right now. It's just a short clip. And then we think about science. Okay, so this, you know, this lesson, for example, if we're thinking, you know, how are we going to implement this lesson, might be it could be a class that could be delivered by the science department. As we see, we're also looking at sort of politics and conspiracy theories in politics. So it could work quite well in humanities. It could even be shared. That would be fantastic if you have more than one teacher delivering it. That would be great. We mentioned the idea of conspiracy thinking. And let's move on. So we got another video there. I'm a big believer in videos. Now this slide is not from lesson number 1. Every lesson that I've designed has an interlinking activity. Okay, so how do the ideas from this lesson link to other lessons that we have looked at? And I think that's really, really important. So I think by the end of the course, all of these ideas will be interlinked in their heads, and that, you know, that's another great way of sort of preparing them for what comes next. Again, not just in TOK, but in all their courses. You know, knowledge is about sort of the application of links, about applying links to what we're learning, about breaking down really the walls that exist between different subjects. So as much as possible, I try and interlink what they do in this particular lesson with other lessons, with the exception of this first lesson, because it's the first lesson. This one comes from lesson number 2. So in lesson number 2, which is all about biases all about biases and perspectives, we look back on ECRI and think about how our biases might affect the way we use evidence. So that's an example of how that will work later on in the course. And then we end with the quote that sort of drives this lesson, Carl Sagan's fantastic quote about extraordinary claims and extraordinary evidence. I would get them to do that on a kind of post-it and leave it on the wall. We will look back on this quote in lesson number 2 and discuss it, because I think it's an important one to discuss. And obviously this is the sort of title of the lesson. So, you know, I think it's a really important thing to consolidate with them. Okay, so that's a typical lesson. As I say, designed to last from 60 to 90 minutes. Each of those things you can do in as much detail as possible. You can also use the final slide, which you'll find on every on all of the different lessons going further. So there are some really nice media sources there that they can use to develop this. They can do that in lesson if you want. They can do it in groups. They can do it individually. If you're a hard taskmaster, you can get them maybe looking at one of these in their own time. Personally, I probably wouldn't do that. But yeah, there's scope for developing these ideas, taking these ideas further, and I give you one of those for each of the classes. So lots of scope there to extend the class if you need to. Okay, so that's it, really. I'm actually quite surprised that it's only 40 minutes that I've spent talking. So I've definitely got some time to take questions. I just wanted to very quickly go over site membership for the next school year, because it's unbelievable. We are now approaching the end of this school year, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. So what have we got to look forward to next year on the theoryofknowledge.net site? Well, everything will be updated. The big question lessons that you might be familiar with will all be updated and redesigned a little bit with new links and new stories, etc., etc. The TOK newsletter, which I'm really trying to build up more than it was before. I've redesigned it. And there's a link there actually that will take you to the last newsletter. I will quickly zoom there. So this is the latest newsletter. If you're not a member, here's a free newsletter for you. So if you're not familiar with this, then it's 20 stories based on really interesting events that are going on in the world right now, hopefully taken from a nice broad range of media sources. I give a quick outline. We concentrate on key terms that you'll find there. I relate it to my big questions, which is my way of organizing the TOK course. I relate it to the themes in the areas of knowledge. You've got links there to take you to the website, so it's quite convenient to use. Also, this is the investigating issues thing, which I'm going to be doing a webinar on very, very shortly. And then some ideas of things you can ask your students, discuss with your students. There's also a presentation that comes with the newsletter. So for each newsletter, you get one of these, which should help you to deliver it in your classroom a little bit more conveniently. And you can even download this, and it's basically a textbook every single month. So you get a brand new TOK textbook based on real life situations if you want every month. So that's the big thing that we're trying to work on at the moment on the site. The other things that you have there, the DP integration tool, I'll be updating that as well. This is the resource that I have for hopefully bringing all DP teachers on board TOK. Exploration points are my way of extending what you see on the website. It's a huge collection of media sources and quotes, and you can play with that yourself to see how that works. Knowledge Heroes, which I gave a webinar on recently, which is a collection of 100 or so key thinkers who I think are really, really important for students to know about in TOK and before. Thinking of yourself, which is what I've just been talking about. Yeah, investigating issues. I will just show you this. I'm delivering a webinar on this later in June. I think it's, I can't remember, 12th of June, I think. So this is a huge new resource which allows you to teach TOK via issues. And we've got a whole bunch of different issues that we look at. This is actually, I've extended it a lot further than this, but it's this kind of thing. We're looking at the idea of decolonization. We're looking at anti-vaxxers. We're looking at the Hawthorne effect, COVID, and just about any aspect of life, social media, migrant crisis, NFTs. If you don't know what NFTs are, find out. They're very intriguing, and I find them quite hard to understand. So loads and loads of things there. I've actually got a lot more now that I've been working on this resource. This will be out in June. So there's lots and lots of goodies for you if you decide to become a member, if you're not a member already. And if you are a member, I hope you're looking forward to all of those new resources. Okay, so I am going to sort of open this up to questions. You can send me questions on the chat. You can send me questions on the Q&A. I've already had a few sent in, so I will have a quick look at these. Sometimes I need a little bit more time to sort of think these things through. So I'm just going to go to my chat. So so someone has just said, I've heard other TOK teachers argue that conspiracy theories are not knowledge, so they shouldn't be used as examples. Thoughts on the pitfalls? Well, I think we have to be careful about generalizing when it comes to conspiracy theories, because sometimes conspiracy theories are totally true, and there has been a conspiracy. There are examples of conspiracies. I think it's a type of thinking rather than, you know, a specific thing. So a tendency, I mean, it's very akin to superstition, really, isn't it? It's akin to finding a pattern where there is no pattern, and making connections where there is no connection. And I think that's why QAnon is so interesting, because it's got more connections between it than almost any other conspiracy theory. It is a collection of all the conspiracies joined into one to think that there is this huge thing going on. I think we should definitely look at it, because it's such a common thing. Is it knowledge? Well, often no, it's not genuine knowledge, but I think it's a fabulous and interesting thing, and that really is the thing that normally drives my lessons. So no, what I want to know is, why do people believe in conspiracy theories when they are so obviously not true? And I've got some fabulous resources, fabulous videos on why people believe in the idea of a flat Earth, and it's really interesting. And I think this is another reason why I do it. I think it helps students to become nuanced, because I don't want them just judging people with conspiracy theories. I want them understanding. So it's easy to laugh at some of these ideas, but why are they there? Why, you know, and if we can go further in understanding, then I think it makes us much more empathetic human beings. So no, I definitely like the idea of teaching conspiracy theory, or not teaching them, but using them as examples for knowledge or not knowledge. Have you developed this program with assessment in mind, or the participation is the grade, so to speak? Running concurrently with GCSEs can, in some parts of the world, come with pressures to grade, speaking from experience. I do not like grading. I don't like exams. I'm a bit of a strange teacher when it comes to all of those things. I think that's why I like TOK so much. You know, the fact that we're not working towards a concrete final tick box kind of exam system. No, definitely, I am not thinking about assessment in mind. I'm thinking about offering an experience to students. I'm thinking about preparing them for something. You know, one of the ways in which I think this prepares them for TOK is that it shows them that you can be a brilliant student without ending up with a letter next to your name. You know, and yes, participation, I think, is important. I want them all offering ideas. I want them all involved, but I don't want to give. I wouldn't give them a grade at the end of it. I think in the slide here, I can't remember. I would, if you want to do something like that, then I would either peer assess or self-assess. You know, how do they think they've changed? How do they think they've developed? So no, definitely not with assessment in mind. Especially, you know, as you say, with GCSEs. You know, if you're doing it at the same time as GCSEs, they've got plenty of stress to kind of cope with. Do you think it's a good idea to run this program as an after-school extracurricular? Well, I sort of alluded to that. In an ideal world, you'd have all your students volunteering to do this after school, which would solve all the problems. In the real world, that's not going to happen. So I would want to give this to all the students, but I know that's difficult. So it sort of depends on what's available in your school and what your school structure is. Yeah, you want to involve as many students as possible. I think that's the key. Yeah, I don't think I just don't think they'd be as on board if they are doing it after school. You know, that's the worst time to teach, isn't it, really? I think, you know, if you have sort of tutorial times, then that's the sort of time to do it. I don't know whether you can share this course with other things that you are running, but it really depends on your course. So I think no is my answer, but that it depends on your school. I wouldn't be able to decide that for you. You know, you've got to make that call, really. All right, I'm just trying to get into my Q&A. Let's get rid of that. So I think I've got one or two other questions on the Q&A. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Here we go. Right, so Abby says, I'm thinking of implementing this as part-time of a 2-week induction to DP. What modifications do you suggest for a compressed course? Good question. I mean, I think what you need to do is just have a look at the lessons and which ones look interesting to you. You know, I maybe cut out half of them. As I say, the idea is that the course exists within itself, and I don't see why you can't just cut out a few lessons. Just choose the best ones, you know, you would go with. So it's up to you. What's going to engage your students? Perhaps, you know, your students you will know are going to find certain lessons resonate more with them, and others perhaps you don't like the look of, and just get rid of those. That's what I would go with. Another question, could you explain a bit more what a possible final product could look like? I believe in choice when it comes to creating these kind of things. So I mean, I will be, you will be able to see this in a week or so, because I will be putting out the final lesson, which it will be in the concluding session. I would say the students should choose their form of product. So it could be a presentation, it could be a blog, it could be a video, it could be an essay, you know, it could be almost whatever they like. And it will have, the content will be them picking one of the key thinkers that we have looked at and explaining what their key idea is and why this resonated with them. Picking out one key idea that they really found interesting and explaining, you know, why this is interesting. Picking out a real life situation that they found interesting and they found really benefited, or they really understood via the application of some of the other concepts that we've looked at. And I would also get them to write a reflection on what they think they've learned from this course, if anything. You know, I really like students challenging me and saying, "Sir, that was a really useless lesson." And then I say, "Well, why did you think that?" And sometimes they change their minds and they actually, "Oh, actually, you know, I did learn this and I did learn that." So yeah, I encourage them to be critical in their reflection of what they've done. Rafia says, are there any membership options other than a whole school one? No, I base the memberships to the site. I've tried to make them as economical as possible. I haven't changed the price of the memberships to the site for about 3 or 4 years. People keep telling me that I should, and I'm trying to avoid doing that. So the membership price it's kind of based on what you might be paying as an individual for some other resources, but you get the whole school kind of access. So I don't know, the glass is for me half full rather than half empty, and it's a good deal for the whole school rather than a bad deal for individuals. I've tried to make it as economic as possible. So the answer is no, there is just a whole school one. If you do have any issues in finding the funds, send me an email, and you know, there are lots of schools out there that I know are struggling, and I am interested in helping them. I've had schools write to me from war zones and said, you know, we really can't find the money, and I'm obviously happy to provide them with free access to the site. So if there is an issue with your school and you're having troubles finding the funds for membership, then I'll try and make it happen for you. So let me know. That's all the questions I have. It is 8 minutes to 12, so we're going to end slightly early. Someone is saying, very nice, Jana, thank you so much. I find that $200 a year is a very reasonable price. Well, thank you. I hope it is. I mean, like I say, it is for everyone in your school. It is not meant to be a TOK resource. It's meant to be a whole school resource, a whole DP faculty resource. So I want other teachers using it. I even want parents using it. I've designed a few resources for parents. I want them getting involved in TOK. So I do try and sort of make it as attractive to as many people as possible in your school community. So I think the price is reasonable, but if you have a problem, just email me and we can talk about that. All right, I think we are at the end. Someone is saying thank you for the session. It was very interesting. If you have any questions, if I didn't make something clear, then please, you know, write to me. I apologize again for the slight tardiness in getting out all of the lessons. They will be with you very, very soon. You know, I'm very happy someone is just leaving and they're very inspired by what they've heard, which is very nice. That's what we're trying to do, isn't it? Okay, thank you very much for joining me. Just a last note, I will be running through investigating issues, which I'm really excited about. So it's a load of different issues, events, happenings set in the real world, set in the contemporary world, and I give you, I hope, the tools to explore them with your students, and you can almost teach the entire course that way. If you want to make a really contemporary zeitgeist kind of driven TOK course, I hope this resource is going to use you. So I'm going to be, you're going to use it. I hope you can join us for the next webinar, which I think is on the 12th of June, but I'll be in contact about that. It'll be a free session again, so everyone is welcome, and we'll talk about how we can use TOK to understand this mad world we live in. Thank you very much. Real pleasure to talk to all of you, and I hope to see you again in the webinars coming up. Thank you very much and have a great day.